Let's go over how to fix a cupped or an extended lead wrist at the top of the backswing. So I will see a lot of players that will get up to the top of the swing and get this wrist into a very cupped position. Typically what this is going to do is open the club face. You can see this club is starting to go a little bit more toe down at the top. And typically from this position, I will see players get a little bit more steep and over the top with it. So usually with that pattern, as players start to cup that wrist, it'll be a little bit more of an over-the-top club path, and it will be a little bit more of an open club face, usually resulting in shots like that of course we do not want. So if we are trying to fix this, the big benefits are going to be that club face is typically going to get a little bit more square, and it can usually help that club shallow a little bit more effectively rather than having this wrist cupped and getting this club to work a little bit more over the top. So we are going to go over the feel on how to fix this and a couple things that you have to watch for when you are going through this fix. So the big thing is going to be when you are getting up to the top of the swing here, this wrist is starting to extend on you. So essentially we are going to want to feel the opposite. As we are bringing this club up to the top, we are almost going to want to feel a little bit more kind of knuckles down with that left wrist, almost like you're kind of revving a motorcycle. For a right-handed player, it'll be the left wrist. For a lefty, it'll be the right. So as we go back, we want to feel like as we are getting up to the top, we are starting to go a little bit more knuckles down with it. That is going to start to bow that wrist a little bit. And again, as we do that, that is going to get you into a position where rather than getting that club face a little bit more open and getting steep, as we can start to feel a little bit more of a flexion move or a bowing move in that wrist on the way up to the top of the swing, that is going to help get that club a little bit more square and help it shallow. From that position, usually that face is going to square up, and that face is going to shut down. So you'll see it's going to be the opposite shot of what I just hit. Path is going to be a little bit more into out. Face is now going to be a little bit more squared up there. So that is going to be the feel, and I'm a huge fan of practicing good, slow partial reps. So when you're getting this feel down, the way I would go about fixing this is take it extremely slow. For you, if you are a player that gets into a more cupped or extended position, you're going to have to feel like that wrist is pretty bowed just to get to a neutral spot. I'm not saying players have to play golf from this position where this wrist is extremely flexed and extremely bowed up at the top. But if you are in this position, you're going to have to feel a little bit more of an extreme move there just to get yourself to kind of a neutral spot. So when it first comes to this fix, what I would do is you know the move. So I'd start with practice swings without even hitting a ball. I would just go up to the top, feel a little bit more of that motion, check, make sure you're there, use a mirror, use your phone to make sure that you're getting into that spot. Once you're there, I would hit very slow partial shots, feeling as you go up, you start to flex that wrist a little bit more, and then go ahead and fire, hitting shots at slower speed. As you start to get more comfortable with that, start to ramp it up a little bit more as far as the speed and the length of the swing goes. But there's a few things you have to be careful with of this, where I will see some players that will think, I'm cupping the wrist on the way back, so I need to immediately start to flex it. And what I will see from players that get into this position is as they will start to bring the club back, they will start to initiate this move too soon. And usually from there, this is where I will see players start to kick this club too far to the inside and really bring this club back very hooded and shut. So players will start to immediately bow the wrist, club gets kicked back behind you. I will see players do two things from here. One is they will keep the club very flat and around them with a hooded face. Now they will try to keep this club underneath. They're going to swing too far from the inside with a shut face. They're going to hit massive pushes or blocks, or they're going to hit big hooks. Or the other thing I will see is players will bring this club back too far to the inside. As they start to work back, that club is going to steepen. It almost reaches its sort of peak depth a little bit too early. Club starts to work a little more over the top, and players will hit very low kind of smother pulls from working over the top with a more shut face. So the timing of when this occurs is very important. So what I'll have players do if they start to get into that pattern is you can take an alignment stick. If you're at the range, you can just stab it into the ground. I would go directly behind the ball by about 2 feet, stab it into the ground, somewhat close to the angle of the shaft here. So when you're in this position, what you're going to want to feel is as you bring this club back is we don't want to start to bow immediately. I don't want you to start to bring this club back and start to rip it underneath of the stick. We want to feel like that takeaway is getting to a little bit more of a neutral position, staying right in line with these hands or just above the stick line here. Now as you start to go up, that is where we're going to start to initiate the bow. So if you notice that you are a player that starts to get that club wrapped a little too far inside and around the body, that is where I would bring that drill into play to keep that club a little bit more outside and then initiate it a little bit later rather than doing it right off the start and ripping this club inside. So that's kind of one issue to watch for. So the other is typically as we start to bow or flatten the wrist a little bit, that is going to lay the club off a little bit more. So most players are going to be in a position where they, as they start to bow the wrist, that is going to start to get this club to a more laid off spot. For a right-handed player, it's going to get this club pointed more kind of out to the left. So if you are a player that is, I don't see this a ton, but it is a matchup I'll come across every once in a while, where players will start to have this wrist cupped, but also laid off. The majority are going to get into a position where that club kicks across and gets a little open, but I do see some that manage to get the club where they will typically have some sort of rolling motion off the start with the forearms, gets the club a little bit flat, and then they cup up to the top, where now they get into this position where that club face is very open. You're going to see this club is out to the left side of the target, but this wrist is still cupped. So if you stay in this spot and you start to bow, you're going to get even further laid off. And I did a past video talking about swings that get a little bit too laid off, having a little bit more of an over-the-top move. And that is where that move can get a little bit worse. So if you are a player that has the club in a laid-off position already and this wrist is cupped, you don't necessarily just want to flatten it. This is where this matchup gets a little trickier, where you usually are going to have to start to load this club a little bit more vertically and down the target line. That way you can start to support the wrist flexion without the club getting too far out to that left side. So those are two more common issues I will see when it comes to the bow. Players will do it too early, or it will get them too laid off in the swing, which will compromise that position. So if you are a player that's working on this, start with a lot of slow reps, really feeling this wrist start to flatten or bow up to the top of the swing. And if you are starting to have issues with that, make sure that club is not getting inside too early, and make sure this club is not getting too laid off where you're now starting to pull it a little bit too far over the top by either using the alignment stick drill to keep the club outside, or by going back and watching that past video and getting that club to load down that target line a little bit more effectively. Also, if you're looking for a new jacket, check out the GT jacket from Stitch Golf. This is perfect for layering. It has plenty of stretch to it so you don't feel restricted when you swing. Use code BryceCope24 for 20% off Stitch site-wide.